A very good evening and morning to the friends joining from different parts of the globe. My name is Aman Sanduja. Thank you for joining us today at one of our first virtual meetup series, Confab. I welcome everyone. We shall be discussing about Confab and multitude acts later on, but right now, without wasting further time, we should directly come to the discussion. And you would be wondering why we specifically named it as a confab, because we wanted to have a peer-to-peer conversation across the globe about various emerging technologies, and blockchain is one of the technologies which is recently trending, and we all have seen the Gartner reports and different other analysis. So today our topic would be to discuss how blockchain can be one of the possible solutions for taming the counterfeits. And I personally would like to thank people joining from University of Bocconi, Stanford, and Cornell, and other reputed institutions. And if I look at it from the everyday perspective, the question comes in my mind after understanding blockchain to an extent is whether I am consuming or buying a real genuine product. It could be t-shirt, it could be medicine, television, stationery, flash drive, footwear. Should you look at these stats, they're shocking. 7% of the global trade annually, valued close to $600 billion, is a counterfeit good. And this is increasing every day, and the estimates are close to $5 to $7 trillion of market by 2020. It has grown 10,000% more than the Bitcoin price, which has ever grown since the inception in the last 2 decades. And India in itself constitutes a market of $5 billion. So today, at our first series, let's try and understand what type of opportunity we have and how blockchain can address this in an effective way. To give us an overview and thoughts from the industrial background, we have Mr. Chintan Oza. If I would like to walk you through Chintan's profile, Chintan's come with an experience, stellar experience of working in multinational companies. He has studied at top-notch universities across the globe and has recently completed his Oxford blockchain program. Today, we look forward to hearing his insights on the topic, how blockchain can tame counterfeits, requesting fellow participants to go on a mute, and this would help us in having the uninterrupted discussion. We are simultaneously putting polls on our social media channels. Feel free to look at them as well. And your questions are very important to us. You may would like to type in a chat box, Suraj and I can definitely pick it, and we shall be trying to answer it shortly to our speaker. Over to you, Mr. Rosa.
Thanks, Aman. Thank you. Good morning, good evening, good afternoon, everyone. It gives me immense pleasure to join this forum and deliver the first talk on taming counterfeits using blockchain. So let me share my screen and we shall get started. So let me know if once everyone is able to view this. Aman, are you able to view it?
Yes, I can.
Okay, great. How about Murli Dev? Okay, someone has responded. Okay, visible. Fine. Let's get started. Okay. Okay, that's a brief on my profile. On the bottommost layer, these are the education institutes I have been associated with. These are the next layers is about different certifications I have pursued. The third layer is about various institutions I volunteer with, and the topmost is for my employers. And above and all, I am a regular blood donor. I would request everyone to donate blood as and when situation arises or time permits. Let's get started. So this is going to be our today's agenda. We'll start with the overview of the problem. What is the counterfeiting problem? What is the global landscape? We'll quickly visit the social and economical impact counterfeit has on our uh, society. Then we move on to what are the current options we have to fight the counterfeiting industry. We'll have a overview of default or typical blockchain. We'll see what are the advantages of the blockchain solution. We'll have a glance through of different startups in this spectrum. What are the challenges in implementing these solutions? What would be the recommendation and forward path? I hope this is okay with everyone. Let's move on. Let us have an overview of this issue of counterfeiting. The amount of counterfeit goods traded annually in global market is higher than the GDP of 150 countries. So if you look at the problem, it's huge. Around 1700% growth has been registered in last decade. This is as per US agency reports. Next one is, if you look at the counterfeit sold goods sold globally, they are much higher than the sales done in the streets. And 3 out of 4 counterfeit goods are manufactured in Asia, wherein China is a major contributor. Across the globe, if we see the loss of value, life, safety, then pharmaceutical sector bears the maximum loss, and which is almost 10 times higher than the second and third products being counterfeited. Let's move on. Aman, I guess someone has just started notation. Okay, fine. Thank you so much. We'll quickly revisit what are the motivational factors driving counterfeiting. Why people are buying counterfeiting? Because if you don't buy counterfeit products, then the industry will not survive much. But there are 4 major driving factors. First one is market. It has large potential market size, and profitability is very high at a very low risk. So, for example, if you copy a Nike shoe, you actually don't invest into any kind of R&D, any product innovation. Just start manufacturing and selling it. Non-availability of genuine products in small town also is a big problem. That is where people from living in those class 2, class 3 cities get attracted to these counterfeited products. And third one is natural genuine power of the brand. Rather than wearing a original Sonata watch, a town 3 guy would like to wear a duplicate Apple watch, right? The next one is institution factors. Uh, it has got low risk of discovery and prosecution. You don't have any technology. You can just, the first copies are sold very well in the market. The regulatory framework and enforcement is also very weak, and it has got its own socio-economic factors, because these counterfeit uh, shops, industries, manufacturing units, they employ people, and at that point of time they don't think, but they just care for their job. So that's how they are there. The next category is for technology, wherein shortage of technologies to track and trace these counterfeit goods are also not widely available, and counterfeit products are being frequently sold on using internet. On the consumer side, if we see, it has got low awareness towards quality, health, safety. All of us have heard about news that certain mobile blasted while charging, and all such quality aspect and quality and safety related issues are being noticed in such counterfeit items. Next one is inability to differentiate between original and the counterfeit item. Consumer is not able to differentiate very easily. And last one is high sensitivity towards price and low regards for the IPR. On the consumer side, all of the consumers are very sensitive towards the price, and most of them also have low regards towards IPR. So they continue to buy those counterfeit goods. So if we look at the global counterfeit landscape, then on the left side you will see that which are the countries which are hit hardest in terms of sales of counterfeit products. And if you look at the right side box, you will see these are the countries from where counterfeit products are manufactured and originated. I have mentioned the source. You can have a look at the source at your convenience. So in total, if we see the trend of impact, what we are going to have is, if the industry uh, gets into uh, certain traction, and if not much of intervention is done, then it will be sizing around $3 trillion by 2022, and it will also take away 5.5 million jobs because of counterfeit goods. So let us quickly look at what are the current options to fight counterfeiting. So as we know, holograms are there, watermarks are there, RFID is being used, barcode is being used. Apart from these well-known options, there are taggants which are used, like, I mean, certain taggants are being added to products so that as and when they are put under, uh, uh, I mean, a specific frequency of light or a specific test or chemical spray, they change the color. And our most famous currency note security threats are also one of the option to fight counterfeiting. So how blockchain helps? So this is a case wherein uh, the use of blockchain counterfeiting platform in pharma sector is being explained. So if you look at this diagram, the manufacturer produces the drug uh, and, and creates a unique code, and then they put it on the blockchain. Next one, as and when the product reaches to the wholesaler, the blockchain transaction gets added, and then the status is updated, then towards pharmacist, and then towards the end customer. So end customer is also equally able to trace and track the path of the medicine what he is using, as well as the pharmacist and distributor are also
अब मैं
able to.
समझा था कि इसमें दो चीजें हैं भाई, अगर तू सिर्फ कॉल भी करेगा ना तो भी तुम हमारा सेमिनार सुन सकता है फोन से.
Aman, can you please mute everyone? Thank you so much. So blockchain counterfeiting solution helps the consumer to have an end-to-end visibility as well as traceability of the good he is using. The next use case is for a bottle of a wine, and wherein the wine manufacturer generates specific QR codes, and then these QR codes are embedded into blockchain. Non-standard goods cannot get onto blockchain, and that is how the originality of uh, wines are maintained. This is one of the advanced use case being used in expensive wines. And to verify these authenticity of these goods, you don't need to own a blockchain node. It can be either verified by scanning a QR code using your mobile, or you can just enter the code manually into a app and verify the identity of the product. Let's move next. So,
Mr. Oza, sorry to interrupt here. Could you be a little louder for the better understanding to the audience? There is some sort of a volume increase that would be very much preferred if you could just be a little louder, or pull your mic a little closer towards your.
yeah, sure, Aman. I hope it is better now. Aman, is it better?
Yes, it's much better. Please
Okay,
go ahead.
okay. So if we see that typically a blockchain network can be integrated with supply chain using application software and a necessary tag wherein non-blockchain supply chain path or countries can use this technology, and that is how the entire chain gets integrated, and ultimately the traceability is established on the blockchain ledger network. So to sum up, these are the advantages of using blockchain for anti-counterfeiting solution. The first one is traceability. You get to trace the entire product path, the entire supply chain path. Flexibility on in terms of manufacturer or distributor or the consumer. You are able to analyze the data. All the stakeholders, including customers, manufacturers, distributor, and government, can participate into this blockchain solution. They are powered with smart contract, very well equipped with uh, these advanced features. They also enable compliance. They are immutable and auditable. These are the few startups in this spectrum. Everledger, Bonafide, VeChain, Pharma Trust are active into different industry domains ranging from pharma to groceries to diamonds and luxury items as well. In fact, India is also gearing up to use blockchain to fight illicit drug trafficking in our country. Niti Aayog is already conducting a pilot, and they are at very advanced stage in this. So let us understand what are the challenges in implementing a blockchain-based anti-counterfeit solution. So first one is regulatory uncertainty. Next one is buy-in of different stakeholder. To implement this solution, you need to have buy-in from distributors, from your suppliers, government agencies, as well as your customers. Next one is lack of technology maturity. All these blockchain technologies are not uniformly available across the spectrum. The another hurdle is level of digitization as well as digital maturity of these stakeholders. Next one is cost of implementing and operating the technology. To operate this solution, there is a cost as well as the ownership, who all would be operating this network, remains a challenge. Lack of acceptance in the industry is also a challenge. Few thought leaders are implementing blockchain, but not everyone is implementing, so that also creates an imbalance. Next one is data security and ownership. Who owns these data and who secures this data also is a big challenge. Another one is not all manufacturers or luxury good item or pharma players are creating their own blockchain network, but they are using the platforms created by various startups. So dependent on blockchain operators over a long term uh, period also is a concern. The last one is governance and compliance in cross-border trade. If you look at different countries, I mean, trade is happening across borders. A medicine manufactured in India can be sold to Germany or to US, to Australia, and not all countries would have a blockchain anti-counterfeit solution implemented. So that also creates a imbalance in the entire service. So here are our recommendations to create better consumer awareness. Next one is industry and government can join hands to run these service and fight counterfeit more effectively. A task force can be formed and necessary steps can be initiated to roll out anti-counterfeit solutions in phase-wise manner. Government can reduce tax to promote anti-counterfeiting efforts. And the last one is government and academia can help bridge the gap in skills availability so that the dependence on uh, blockchain blockchain centric or I would say that adoption of blockchain can be enhanced. That's about it. That's it from me. Thank you so much. I was given 10 minutes time. I guess I took around 14 minutes.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chintan. It was a pleasure to listen to you and the kind of a presentation you have made it. It really cleared a lot of my doubts. There are some of the questions which people have already written in our Google form. I would request Suraj to ask you those questions, and then some of the questions which people would want to ask you during, I mean, they already had it during this session. They can type it on the chat box, and then Suraj or I can take it forward.
Yeah, sure.
Hello, folks. Suraj here. Hi, Mr. Chintan. Good evening to you.
Hi, good evening.
Yes, we've received some interesting questions regarding the adoption of blockchain in fighting counterfeit goods. Some are basic, some are quite insightful. We start off with something very simple. Which industry is using it? Would you like to retouch again, or should we just?
Yeah, sure. So pharma players are using it. Luxury good manufacturers are using it. Sportswear brands are using it. Large supply chains have started using it. So these are the industry segments where the adoption or pilots are being conducted.
Excellent. So most of the are from a business to consumer perspective. Do you see its adoption in the business to business models as well?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, business to business model would get rolled out first, and then it will eventually get rolled out towards the end customer. That is what is my my understanding. Reason being, the manufacturer and the distributor are connected on manufacturer's network. So their exchange of information and data is more frequent than the individual customers. So in the first phase, it would get rolled out between the manufacturer and their distributors and suppliers. Then eventually it would reach to the end customer in the next phase.
Interesting point that you make, Mr. Chintan, that the interactions between suppliers and buyers of between the B2B chain are quite more frequent than a B2C chain. So, if is it safe to assume that if B2B supplier buyer relationships are more transparent or more trackable because of blockchain in the supply chain chain, would that create a cascade effect on to the end consumer in the retail market for the consumer to buy with more confidence?
Yes, definitely. In fact, there is a coffee brand which has started using this solution, so that if you are using their app, you can accurately pinpoint that from which country, which area, which farm this coffee has been produced.
Excellent. That's one of the majorly visible use cases that's been often talked about. Coffee is like a very easy example to relate to, because oftentimes the beans that are grown in third world countries in South America and in Africa or in Asia, generally they take a long supply chain to reach the end consumer in a coffee shop. So they touch different points of interface between the supply chain until it reaches your cup. So that's an interesting point. Going on to the next one, it comes from a very different perspective. What is the validity of data that enters the blockchain from the physical world? And the question also says, what data oracles are used besides sensors on physical objects?
So I didn't get the second part of the question, but on the first part, it depends on the regulation based on the industry domain, like regulation, country-specific regulation for pharma for certain country may be different than some other country. So usually these data is being preserved for 5 years time.
Excellent. So it would be a country-specific adoption, and it would need some sort of...
Yes, so data, I mean, the period for which the data has to be preserved differs from country to country and industry to industry, right? Not all industries preserve the same data. I mean, in case of insurance, if we talk, then they have to preserve all the related documents for 15 years time. For telcos, it is 7 years. For income tax in India, it's 7 years. But similar regulation may differ from any other country to country.
Very true that. And I think perhaps from the tone of the question, perhaps they are stressing, the person who's asked it is stressing on how do we prove that the data that enters the blockchain, the initial data that enters the blockchain is itself true. How do we prove the integrity? What measures can we implement to make sure that the person who's entering the data on the blockchain is making the right entry?
Yeah, so that is where the compliance and governance part comes in. And in the entire stakeholders, government and regulators are part of it, and that is where allotted sequence of tagging is being embedded into the blockchain as per the batch manufacturing or the location of the plant and etc. Likewise, so government and regulators play important role in this aspect.
So it will probably require implementation of a permission blockchain right at the start of the supply chain.
Yes.
Interesting. And the next question, of course, is how economically viable it is.
Well, I would say it adds to certain cost, but when you look at the damage being done by counterfeit industry and the impact on the brand, then the business case becomes viable. As of now, it's a bit costly.
Well, so it becomes also a function of education across the entire spectrum of the purchase and sale of goods.
Yes, very true.
Interesting. I did come across IBM article that the RFID sensors that they're implementing soon. Their calculation is that within a couple of years of implementation, probably the cost per each reusable RFID tag will come down to 4 cents per lifetime.
Yes, in fact, there are a couple of other startups who are trying to lower the cost to almost 2.5 cents per
Wow.
good.
That's almost many factors of reduction. I mean, that would ultimately, I think, pass on to the end consumer.
Yeah.
So the next question, if we can move on, is how will the ecosystem be enabled? Who will onboard the players, and how? Do we have experience beyond talking? Do we have wide-scale industry adoption in practice?
So yes, pharma majors have started adopting it. And if you look at pharma, then they are being driven. FDA is one of the major drug regulator, and they are also equally pushing for implementation of such solutions.
Excellent. So basically, I think government has a wide-ranging responsibility and also a sort of a role to play, because it ultimately is the consumers in their own domain or in their own country that are going to be affected. So do you think there is a case that governments across the globe need to cooperate across the board and then form an alliance of some sort, or a consortium of some sort with respect to counterfeiting?
Yes, definitely. That is the need of the moment.
Interesting. So, and the next question is, how can you create an everlasting link between the good and the blockchain? Perhaps the tone of the question is, should a good lose trackability, or should it become damaged beyond repair? And how does it get registered in the blockchain? Or let's say if it is tampered with, how does it reflect on the blockchain?
So in that scenario, you won't be so towards the end user and consumer. There are handheld devices. There are nowadays, in last 1 year, mobile app enabled blockchain verification systems are also in place. So if the tag gets damaged, then you won't be able to scan it either using a handheld or a mobile. So that is where you can actually keep that good aside and then perform some other test for validating the authenticity, originality of that product.
Great. Okay. And the next question also comes from an interesting perspective. If brands are able to prove that they are producing 100% original goods, an increase in brand value would lead to increase in price?
Not significant price, because as and when they look at the value of the brand, the pride and prestige of the brand, then probably they may not think more about the cost, but they would like to, the manufacturer would like to guard the brand and give a desired customer experience to their customer, for which they are investing in R&D, innovation, and all these aspects in a very heavily invest. These are very big investments for them.
Very true. Initially, when we started off the presentation, you touched on a point that usually the case why people generally buy fake goods is because of the price. So coming back to that, does it qualify as a valid reason for companies to look at offering discounts initially to let people understand uh, the the validity of this use case, or to express themselves that in the end of this entire exercise, the consumer themselves will benefit from it. So probably a price reduction could work, or is it something that's something quite uneconomical to catch the
Or
attention of a consumer?
yeah, it may not be possible for all the brands to give discounts everywhere, but yes, definitely different product range based on the affordability of different markets would be a good option to explore.
So probably the level of implementation could vary with different markets. Probably an FMCG good will have a different level of implementation rather than not so heavy implementation as a luxury brand would need to.
Yes, very true.
Okie dokie. And the next question is there a publicly available platform, blockchain platform, that can be used for checking the certification of goods? I think you already touched on the app. Could you please tell us again, or if you could, or if I could request you to please spell it out so that we can make a note of it and include it in our
So
notes?
yeah, so last quarter I read about the article wherein IBM has turned mobile of users to verify, I mean, enable these mobiles by a app so that a user can validate and verify the authenticity of the good via blockchain. So the app gets connected to the distributed network, and it gets a response which is very easy for a user to understand and help with the handheld. So that is where this is the recent most development. Uh, there is one more. I missed the name, but there is entire medical pharmacy chain in UK who has started using blockchain solution, uh, and then they are offering their customers, if they would like to verify the medicines they are buying, they are using the kiosk mode to enable the users to validate and verify the authenticity of the medicines. So on the one hand, IBM has started using these mobile apps. On the other hand, some other operator has started using the kiosk mode.
Well, that's a positive move to make it mainstream. And since we already touched on currency, I think there's another question which comes from the crowd. Is it viable that governments can convert the fiat currencies into digital to fight the counterfeiting of currency notes?
Well, that's an ideal scenario.
Well, true. I think the last one is how effective will these solutions be when implemented in countries where corruption is extensive? Or probably how strong will these solutions stand up to tampering, etc., when the entire country itself suffers from endemic corruption, or it's inherent in that society?
So probably in such countries, they would not like to verify and validate the authenticity of the good, but they would be driven by some other motive of corruption, right?
True. I agree with your point. Yes. Yes. So basically, coming back to rounding up all these questions that we had when the crowd signed up, it's to look at it overall, it's a function of supply chain, and which creates a cascading effect down to the end consumer. Would that sum it up in a very concise manner?
Yeah, definitely. So a cascade, I mean, it gets cascaded and then which is flexible, auditable, and immutable. It can be governed by government agencies, the entire chain and visibility from where the goods are manufactured to where they are consumed. So indirectly, they make the supply chain as a smart supply chain.
Cool. Also, I think we have in the chat on Zoom itself some questions from the floor. Somebody from Mr. Murali Krishnan, I think, has a question that how blockchain can stop fake goods manufacturing. I still fail to understand. I can still make a lucrative gray market my target. Well, probably I think we have already spoken about completely eradicating the black market. But how anybody who would try to mix a few, let's say, in the countries where still adoption is not mainstream, how soon do you think that this solution would gain mainstream adoption and then finally override the gray market?
Yeah, so it may not happen once the solution is rolled out. Maybe first 1,000 days it may not happen, but over the period of time through influencing the customer and running various campaigns, the behavior of the customer can be changed so that we actually encourage the customer to verify the product before the use. And that is how
And I think
weed out those gray market channels.
Right, and probably from look at our audience, probably it's mostly from India today or in the chat room today. How soon do you think, from the audience perspective, how soon do you think that will go mainstream in India?
By 2022.
Is that far? I mean, wouldn't you think it's a little less challenging? Probably within the next 18-24 months, do you see at least some visibility?
So 18 to 24 months up to the distributor level, yes.
Okay.
But towards the end consumer, it's too far.
So probably a B2B rollout initially.
B2B by 2020, B2C by 2022.
Interesting, right. So that's a good perspective coming from behind the scenes. And one more question is, when is the policy document from the Government of India on the use case of blockchain for certain e-governance applications be available to all?
So as I understand, policy is being framed and we should expect it in 2018 itself. Let's hope the best.
Right. And the next one, I think, is about the printing ink industry. I think we've already touched it in various slides and various discussions. Aman, do you have anything else from the social media that you see?
Not at my end right now, but I have a question, Mr. Oza. This is, I sort of try and draw the thin line between the presentation and the kind of a doubt I have. Should I ask right now?
Yeah, sure. Go ahead.
All right. So since you mentioned about a hallmark, we see most of the goods still using that kind of interface to bring a trust, to bring the authenticity or credibility or genuineness in the product. How a combination of a hallmark with a blockchain or without a blockchain is suitable for certain kind of a goods, or how can I also look at it from the food and beverage industry? Apart from the packaged products, I understand Walmart is experimenting a lot on the organic side of it. But do you have some of the examples to share from the first scenario where Hallmark can be combined with blockchain? Or second is regarding the food and beverage industry where we can see some kind of highlights happening in, let's say,
Yeah, so I can recall one of the campaigns wherein certain random numbers were printed behind the coin of the cool drink bottle, and users were asked to share this over a SMS, and that is how they actually they were doing some kind of beta and to check whether which kind of products are being sold in which markets. So that is on the cool drink side. And if we see on the hologram side, then there is a challenge of duplication on the holograms as well. So that is where when the supply chains are spreading in multiple countries, such kind of counterfeiting goods is a concern.
all right. Yes, I totally agree with you. If you would allow me to share one of the examples. So
Yes.
I met a gentleman from Mexico. He with the manufacturing friend of him produces a tool, and then similar tool is being produced in China, and the China sold it at 1/4 of the cost. But the actual complaints comes back to the original.
To the original
Yeah,
manufacturer.
that's
Yes.
the problem. So ultimately, they're figuring it out how to put the tool on a blockchain. Obviously, tool doesn't cost more than $1,000, but they're still
All of us, love Washington apples, right? And Washington apples, they have got a hologram, but that hologram has got a spelling error. So hologram doesn't make any difference. The user just looks at the hologram and then buys it. But the holograms has got a different spelling of Washington.
that's interesting. So, anyways, pleasure to have you, Mr. Chintan Oza. And,
If you don't mind, Aman, one last question. I received a text message.
okay.
Sorry, I received a text message from one participant who could not be here, but is asking, how does this apply, and how do we weed out the rampant fake rampant sorry, rephrase the question. I'm just trying to rephrase the question. Basically, if I paraphrase it, he says, how do we probably stop the piracy in the movie and the music industry?
So there are different solutions being tried by media industry in terms of watermark, in terms of validity of the media is also being tried. So there are, apart from using blockchain for authenticity or allowing the control over media, these are the kind of solutions are being tried by the media industry. If we look at the blockchain would actually help unlock the media, and then you can actually listen to a song or view a movie, and based on the validity of that code, you will get access to the content, and once the validity is expired, that's about it. So such is the solution I could think of.
Well, interesting, because I also shared a link within the group yesterday. There is current research being done by some academics that they are studying a new privacy and security standard for a JPEG format. This is for embedding the digital
DRM, so they will embed the DRMs into it, right?
Yes, correct.
Yeah.
So probably that could be a solution that's not so far away, and that could probably eventually move into the moving media as well.
Very true.
Great. I think this question has rounded off from the floor. Aman, any further points that you would like to make now?
I think it sort of summed up most of the questions and the insights which Mr. Chintan Oza has given us. Would definitely have excited to do more of a research, and ultimately a shift gonna be happening very soon from a fake world to a genuine world, at least in the consumer goods market for sure. Without I couldn't see any more questions, and if there will be, we would be happy to send you offline, and then you could answer them whenever you get a convenient time.
Sure, definitely. After this session, I will put my PPT on slide share and share it with Aman. Aman will share it further with all of you.
Once again, thank you very much, Mr. Chintan Oza, for taking out a valuable time from your busy schedule
Thanks.
and sharing insights with us. Thank you.
All
Thank
right.
you, everyone.
Thanks, everyone.
Folks who all have joined on a Friday evening and have taken your valuable time to understand this concept by Mr. Chintan Oza. So thank you very much for joining us.